The screen is black, wind, soft at first, then sharper, pushing through tall fields of dry corn. A lantern flame flickers into view, trembling, held by a pale, shaking hand. Sarah Whitlock steps forward, her breath short, cloudy in the cold night air. She is alone. She whispers, voice breaking. Sarah, soft, frightened. Jonas. Elliot, nothing answers, only the whisper of corn stalks brushing together like distant whispering voices. The air feels tight, too still. The moon hangs low and colorless, a washed-out coin in the sky. Sarah takes another step. Her boots sink into soft, disturbed soil, as though someone has been standing there repeatedly. She stops. She listens. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Behind her, one step, then another. Sarah's breathing turns sharp. Her fingers tighten around the lantern handle. She does not turn around. Should not turn around. But the footsteps grow closer, impossibly close, like the breath of something standing just behind her shoulder. The corn leans toward her. The night tilts. The flame in the lantern warps, bends sideways, as though pulled by unseen breath. Then the lantern shatters. Glass hits the earth. The flame goes out. Everything falls into darkness. A faint whisper, barely audible, voice, not human. A do not turn around. The story begins long before that night, in the fields. In the year 1774, on the edge of the American frontier, 13 small settlements lined the winding river that cut through miles of untouched wilderness. To the outside world, they were nothing more than small dots on a map, if they appeared on any map at all. The settlements were built by families seeking quiet, not glory, not wealth, just a place where the world could not reach them. They worked the land by hand, dug wells, raised barns, survived winters that froze the river solid. Life was hard, but it was honest. The people of the settlements among them lived Sarah Whitlock. Sarah had arrived with her husband 3 years earlier, both carrying hope, tools, and one worn Bible. But the land was not kind. After a fever swept through that winter, Sarah buried her husband under the oak tree on the ridge. Since that day, her voice had grown softer. But her eyes saw everything. She worked her farm alone, quiet, steady, resilient. Yet she often felt that the land was watching back. Elliot Turner, the sleeper Elliot, was a boy of only 10. He lived with his mother in a small cabin near the mill. He was gentle and quiet, fond of carving small wooden animals and leaving them in the road for travelers to find. But Elliot sleepwalked, not sometimes, not occasionally, every night. He would rise from his bed, eyes open but unseeing, and walk barefoot into the fields, standing perfectly still among the corn, as though listening to someone only he could hear. When questioned, he always said the same thing. He calls when the moon is thin. No one knew who he was. And no one asked a second time. Jonas Hale, the traveler who arrived with nothing, then came Jonas Hale. He appeared one autumn evening on the main road, coat dusty, boots worn, hat in his hands. No horse, no cart, no supplies, no past. He claimed he had walked across 3 colonies seeking a place quiet enough to pray. He spoke with a calm, even voice, the kind that settles the mind whether you trust the man or not. He said he could help, and oddly, the land seemed to listen. After he arrived, the soil grew richer. The river ran clearer, the crops sprouted higher and faster than any season before. The settlements rejoiced and claimed the land had been blessed, but Sarah's unease deepened. Jonas never worked the fields. He never slept in his cabin. Some nights, villagers saw him standing alone in the center of the fields, face tilted toward the sky, as though waiting for something to answer him. When asked what he prayed to, he never said God. He only said, the land remembers those who pay respect. A change in the air over time. People stopped talking loudly, stopped laughing, stopped singing in the evenings. The settlements grew rich in harvest, yet thin in spirit. At night, the wind carried a different tone, a whispering under the leaves. Not words, just the shape of words. Something listening, something speaking. And no one, not even the bravest farmer, dared to go near the fields after sundown. All except Elliot, who continued to sleepwalk. Sometimes Sarah would see him outside at night, small silhouette among towering corn, and she would feel a pressure in her chest. The nights turned cold enough that the windows frosted at the corners, and the breath of every living thing rose like smoke in the air. Yet the harvest refused to die. The crops did not wither. The fields did not rest. The corn grew taller and thicker, with each passing night. The settlement praised it as a miracle. Sarah did not. She began noticing how the fields reacted to sound. When she called Elliot's name one morning, the corn nearest her shivered, not with the wind, but as if something inside the stalks had heard her, and answered. The night of the first whisper that night, Sarah could not sleep. Her cabin was still. The only sound was the soft crackle of dying fire, until she heard it, a voice, from outside her window. It was quiet, barely more than a breath, but unmistakable. It spoke her name. Sarah. She froze. Not because someone called out, but because the voice was familiar. It was her husband's voice, the one she buried 3 winters ago. She stood beside the window, but did not open the curtain. The voice came again, closer now, right against the wood. Sarah, let me in. Her blood turned to ice. Her blood turned to ice. She wanted to scream, but her lungs locked. She backed away slowly, and then 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not threatening, just patient. Knock, 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 knock. The same way her husband used to knock when returning home late from hunting. Tears gathered in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something far worse, recognition. But Sarah did not open the window. She stepped away and whispered to herself, "That is not his voice, and he is not outside." The knocking stopped. Silence returned, but she did not sleep. At dawn, she walked to the fields. The frost was still fresh. Her breath fogged the morning light, and there, in the middle of the rows of towering corn, stood Elliot Turner, barefoot, eyes open, not blinking. His nightshirt hung loose, brushing the tops of the stalks. Sarah called out softly, "Elliot?" He didn't respond. She stepped closer, slow, cautious. Only when she was near enough to touch him did he speak. Voice faint and distant. He said, "You heard him." Sarah felt her knees weaken. "Who?" "Elliot, who spoke to me." The boy's eyes flicked upward, not to her, but over her shoulder, and in that moment, Sarah felt it, breathing, right behind her, hot, slow, steady breath, as though something stood inches away. She did not turn around. Her heart pounded so violently she thought her ribs would crack. Elliot whispered, "He stands where you don't look." The corn rustled, though there was no wind. Sarah grabbed Elliot's wrist and pulled him away, running back toward the settlement, never looking back at the thing breathing behind her. Only when they reached the open clearing did the sensation finally stop. The fields went silent. Sarah held Elliot tightly and whispered, "We cannot tell the others." Elliot nodded, still staring at the ground. He said they already know. Sarah froze. Her hands went cold. Her heart slowed. Because deep in her memory, somewhere behind her grief, she realized something she had never questioned. No one in the settlement had ever spoken of the settlers before them. No graves, no records, no stories, as if the land had swallowed the first people who lived here. And now it was hungry again. The roads that lead back home, and the next morning, fear spread through the settlement, quiet and invisible, like sickness in the blood. People spoke less. Children stayed inside. Doors were locked before dusk, but no one spoke of the whispers. Not publicly. Fear is a silent language, and everyone was speaking it now. After the incident in the fields, Sarah did something she had not done in 3 years. She packed food, water, her husband's old knife, a quilt, a Bible, and before sunrise, she and Elliot began walking the dirt road leading east toward the nearest known township, nearly 30 miles away. The air was cold and still. Their footsteps sounded too loud, echoing across the empty valley. No one saw them leave. They didn't want anyone to stop them. Hours passed. The road wound past bare trees, through tall dry grasses, across silent meadows, until they reached a familiar oak tree. The same oak tree Sarah once passed every day. The one that stood near the settlement crossroads. Sarah stopped walking. Elliot did too. Both of them stared at the tree. Then slowly, Sarah turned her head. They were standing at the entrance of the settlement again, the same cabins, the same fences, the same fields. They hadn't turned around. They had walked straight, yet here they were. Elliot's voice shook. The road bent. Sarah whispered, "No, the land bent us." Determined, Sarah grabbed Elliot's hand and ran, this time toward the river. The river was the one thing that could not lie. Water flows how it flows. Water does not change for man or spirit. They followed the riverbank for miles, until the sun touched the trees. Hours passed. Their feet ached. Their legs burned. But just before dusk, Sarah heard something. Running water. Not ahead. Behind. She turned, and her heart stopped. They were back at the same river crossing they had started at. They had never moved. The land had moved around them. The boy took a shaky breath. It doesn't let us go. Sarah and Elliot returned to the settlement just before dark. Faces turned toward them. No one spoke, but everyone knew what had happened, because every family had tried to leave, every road had turned back, every river looped. Some had climbed the ridge, only to find themselves standing at the foot again. The settlements were not in the world. They were inside something's memory. A memory that refused to release them. Sarah and Elliot returned to the settlement just before dark. Faces turned toward them. No one spoke, but everyone knew what had happened, because every family had tried to leave. Every road had turned back. Every river looped. Some had climbed the ridge, only to find themselves standing at the foot again. The settlements were not in the world. They were inside something's memory, a memory that refused to release them. Jonas Hale stood at the edge of the cornfield as they approached. Not angry, not surprised. Just waiting. His voice was calm, too calm. As he spoke, this land was promised long before we came. Sarah stepped forward, anger breaking through her fear. A promise to who? Jonas did not blink. Jonas did not breathe. Jonas did not breathe. Jonas did not move his eyes from the fields. For the one who walks while others sleep. Elliot's hand tightened around Sarah's. The wind moved through the corn, slow, deliberate, like someone exhaling. Jonas continued, "We are not settlers, Sarah. We are replacements," and the sun fell behind the hills as the first sleepwalkers began to step out of their cabins. Doors opening, on, feet dragging, eyes empty, drawn like moths to the dark, drawn into the field, drawn to him. Night returned quickly, as though the sun itself was afraid of the land. The settlement's homes stood in silence, their windows dark. No laughter, no prayer, no music, only the quiet shuffle of bare feet walking across cold earth. The sleepwalkers had begun. The first was Eleanor Turner, Elliot's mother. She had always been gentle, always humming soft lullabies while she cooked, even during the hardest winters. At midnight, Sarah woke to the sound of her cabin door creaking open. She rushed outside, cold air burning her lungs, just in time to see Eleanor. Barefoot eyes open but unseeing face calm. Almost peaceful, she walked toward the cornfields, toward the whispering. Sarah called out to her, but Eleanor did not hear. Elliot ran after her, crying, "Mama, Mama, come back, come back." "Mama!" Sarah caught him, held him tight, but Eleanor never turned. She vanished into the rows of corn. No scream, no struggle, no goodbye, just gone. By dawn, her body was found standing upright among the stalks. Eyes open, skin pale, breath gone, but her face was smiling softly, like she was listening to someone speak to her from far away. Elliot collapsed, and the land felt too quiet. The next days were worse. Children began to forget things, not memories of events, but memories of themselves. A girl of 6 asked why her own hands didn't feel like hers. A teenage boy stared at his reflection in the river and wept, because the face staring back felt like a stranger. Names were the first to fade. Then voices, then faces, then attachments. The land was not killing them. The land was erasing them. Sarah tried to remain strong, for Elliot, for herself, for sanity. But grief makes the world blur at the edges. One evening, while washing her hands, she looked down and realized she couldn't remember her husband's face. Only fragments, the shape of his smile, the weight of his boots on the porch, the way his hands felt in hers, but not his face. She leaned on the wall, shaking. The land had begun to take her too. Jonas Hale moved through the settlement like a quiet shadow. He did not comfort. He did not grieve. He simply watched, as though observing a ritual. One night, Sarah confronted him, voice trembling with fury. You knew this place was cursed." Jonas looked at her with an expression not of guilt, but recognition. "Accursed," he almost smiled. "No, Sarah. It is owed. The first settlers broke a promise. We are the payment." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. And Elliot, a child? What did he owe? Jonas's eyes softened with something that almost resembled sorrow. The land does not understand childhood, only presence, only memory. As night fell, the wind carried whispers once more. This time not one voice, but many, soft, familiar, like people calling loved ones from inside their dreams. Sarah held Elliot close as he cried into her coat. His voice was small, broken. I don't remember what her voice sounded like, and Sarah realized the grief of losing someone's life is terrible, but the grief of losing the memory of them, that is unbearable. The settlement no longer felt alive. It felt like a place holding its breath. People whispered instead of speaking. Doors were bolted before twilight. No one slept, not truly, terrified of waking up somewhere else, walking. But the whispers in the corn still came, soft, rhythmic, patient. Like something ancient waiting for the living to give up. Sarah refuses to lose Elliot. Elliot had changed. His eyes, once bright and restless, now looked distant, unfocused, like he was listening to something only he could hear. During dinner, he suddenly asked, was there ever a time before? Sarah's spoon slipped from her hand. He didn't remember their old home. He didn't remember the ocean, the laughter, the warmth of summer. The land had begun rewriting him. Sarah knelt beside him, hands trembling, voice cracking. Listen to me. You are Elliot Turner. You are my son. I will not lose you. He blinked slowly. I believe you. You would slowly. I believe you. But his tone sounded like a child repeating something told to him by a stranger. Sarah felt something tear inside her. That night, she decided to fight. No matter the cost, she stayed awake beside Elliot's bed, a lantern burning bright beside them. She recited memories to him like prayers. The smell of cinnamon bread, the creek near their old home, his father's voice reading stories at night, but as she spoke, Elliot flinched, as though the memories hurt him. He whispered, "It's too loud, Mama." Sarah froze. There was no sound. What's too loud? What's too loud? Elliot stared at the window, the field. The lantern flickered, dimmed. Jonas, the one who always appeared calm, always certain, now wandered the settlement at night, muttering to himself. His eyes were red. His hands shook. He wasn't sleeping either. But unlike the others, he refused to go near the fields. Sarah followed him one night, keeping distance. Jonas stood at the edge of the corn rows, breathing like a man trying not to scream. He whispered to the field, not him, not the boy. Take me instead. The wind answered, soft, almost kind. Jonas fell to his knees, defeated. 3 nights later it returned, the figure they had seen before, tall, gaunt, leaning sideways as if its bones did not understand how to hold a body upright. It stood at the edge of the fields, not moving, not breathing, but watching. Sarah froze at the window, its head tilted, slowly, toward her cabin, and then toward Elliot's room, as though it knew his name, as though it had been waiting. Sarah made her decision. They would run, not at dawn. The land was awake then. Not in daylight, the corn whispered most clearly under the sun, but at the darkest hour, when even fear grows tired, she packed quickly. Waterbread, a map worn from folding her husband's old compass, she lifted Elliot, light to light, into her arms and moved quietly through the settlement. But as they passed the last cabin, Jonas stepped into their path, not threatening, not angry, just broken. There is no leaving. Sarah shook her head, tears burning hot. I won't let it take him. Jonas looked at Elliot, and something inside him shattered. It already has. Sarah slapped him. Jonas didn't flinch. He only whispered, run if you need to. But when you hear him speak in a voice that is not his, do not answer. Sarah ran. Into the night, into the dark tree line. Away from the settlement, away from the fields. Elliot clung to her, his breathing soft and slow. But just before the forest swallowed them, he whispered, Mama, they're coming. Sarah looked back. The figure was no longer alone. There were many now, silhouettes, human shapes, standing silently in the field, waiting. Some places do not want to be forgotten. The forest was colder than the settlement, unnaturally cold, as if winter lived beneath its soil. Branches tangled overhead, blocking the moon, turning the darkness into something thick, almost physical. The night pressed in around Sarah and Elliot like a closing hand. Elliot's head lay against her shoulder, breathing steady, too steady, like someone pretending to sleep. Sarah stumbled over roots, whispering, Hold on, baby, we're leaving, just hold on. But the forest felt endless. Every tree looked the same. The whispering from the fields had not stopped. It had followed. As Sarah walked, Elliot's fingers curled suddenly into her dress. His voice, soft, dream-thick, rose near her ear. He's watching you. Sarah froze mid-step. She didn't ask who. she already knew. Elliot's head slowly lifted, too slowly, like something was guiding it instead of muscles. His eyes opened, not wide with curiosity, but wide like someone looking from far away. He says you do not remember. Sarah's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Elliot, listen to me. His lips moved again. Only this time the voice that came out was not a child's. It was older, dry, like soil and bone. She came from the sea. She came to settle land that was never hers. Sarah staggered back, almost dropping him. Stop it, stop. But Elliot kept speaking, his eyes unblinking, fixed on nothing. You took, you claimed, you built, and you forgot who was buried beneath. The wind around them stopped. Even the insects fell silent. The forest was listening. Sarah stumbled into an open space, a wide clearing where the trees formed a jagged ring. There were shapes on the ground, old wooden posts, broken crosses, graves, unmarked. Not Christian graves, older, indigenous, the land's first owners, except the soil looked freshly disturbed. Looked freshly disturbed, as though something had recently crawled out. Sarah fell to her knees. No, this is not our fault. We didn't know. A whisper rolled through the clearing. You did. The figures appeared, not from behind trees, not walking. They were simply there, shadows shaped like people, but stretched, bent. And now, like they had been pulled upright again after rotting in the ground. Not spirits, memories wearing bodies, rustling, footsteps. Jonas emerged into the clearing, lantern in one hand, axe in the other. Sweat, dirt, tears dried on his face. He did not look surprised to see the graves. He knew. Sarah, Jonas, what is this? Jonas looked broken beyond tears. The 13 settlements were not founded, they were taken. Sarah shook her head, refusing. That was long before us. Jonas, the land does not forget time. Only people do. He pointed at the graves. The first settlers, they killed those who lived here, buried them in a circle, not to honor them, but to trap their spirits beneath the soil. Sarah covered her mouth. Jonas continued, voice trembling. The settlers used their spirits as a ward against sickness, as a blessing for fertile land. The harvest grew, the settlers thrived, but the land was never theirs. He looked at Elliot. Every generation, the land takes one child back. Sarah felt her chest collapse inward. No, Jonas whispered. This year, it chose him. The figures began to step forward, slow, soundless, patient. Sarah clutched Elliot to her chest. Please, take me instead. Elliot looked up. His own voice returned, small. Afraid. Mama, I'm scared. The spirit stopped. Silence, as if her love was the only thing stronger than the land. For a moment, just one, Sarah believed she could fight this, that she could hold him tight enough to anchor him here, that she could keep him. But the clearing soil shifted. Graves opened. Warm breath brushed her ear. Not human. The land remembers the blood that fed it. What is taken can love you as it leaves. The clearing was silent. The spirit stood motionless, waiting, not forcing, not rushing, just waiting with the patience of earth that has seen centuries of blood. Sarah held Elliot so tightly her arms trembled. Her heart beat so hard it felt as if it were trying to break out of her chest. Jonas lowered his axe. He understood something Sarah did not. There was no fight to win, only a choice. The last conversation, Elliot's eyes softened. The strange voice was gone. For now, he was just a child again. Elliot, small, trembling. Mama, I don't want to go. Sarah's voice cracked, the words painful. Then don't. Stay with me. Please, just stay. But his breathing grew shallow, as if the land was slowly pulling the life from his chest. He whimpered. It hurts. Mama, it hurts to stay. Sarah froze. Those words did not sound like surrender. They sounded like truth. If she kept him, he would not live. He would suffer, slowly, painfully, until the land took him piece by piece by piece. But if she let go, he would be taken into the place beneath the soil, the place the murdered were forced to sleep. Not dead, not alive, just remembered. The choice no mother should face Sarah placed her forehead against his. Wind moved through the clearing, soft, almost warm. She whispered, I love you. I will always love you. You are mine. Elliot whispered back, I know. Her fingers loosened. Just enough. The spirit stepped forward. They did not rip him away. They did not drag him. Elliot simply leaned out of her arms, as if into sleep, into them, into the earth that had been calling his name since the day he was born. The land accepted him, gently, Sarah did not scream. She did not collapse. She simply stood there, arms empty, eyes dry, like a candle burned down to nothing. Jonas bowed his head. The clearing was quiet again. The clearing was quiet again, as if nothing had ever happened. What became of Sarah? Some say she returned to the settlement. Some say she walked into the forest and never came back. Some say she became one of the figures standing at the field's edge at night. But one thing is known. When the wind moves through the corn at dusk, you can hear a woman's voice, soft, loving, calling a child's name that will never answer. If the land asked you to give up the person you love most, not to kill them, but to remember what was done, would you hold on to them, even if it meant watching them suffer? Or would you let them go?